Oh, we were eating pine squirrels in Colorado. Ate the kidneys.
The little kidneys, yeah.
The little kidneys taste like bacon.
Yep.
And when you've been backpacking for like 7 days, oh, wow. What is it?
Hunger is the best spice.
That's right. Ranella, when he talked about you, he was complimenting you for not just your, cooking your quail or your rabbit, but it was all the dishes that go with it. So you cover that kind of stuff in your books.
So I have a restaurant background. Every recipe on the website or in any of my books has been heavily tested, not only by me, but by actual humans. If your animal is already in rigor mortis, you might not want to take the backstrap off until the next day.
And that makes a difference. That makes
a difference. Huge difference. You hear it all the time. I shot this doe, but it was really tough. Or I shot this young pig, but it was really tough. Well, that's why.
Possum's in here.
Kind of.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We are in Arizona. Arivaca. I wanted to say Mexico.
We're close.
But we're not quite there. By the way, have you heard Randy Newberg's story about Mexican prison?
Okay, so everybody's been asking me about Randy Newberg's story about Mexican prison.
You're going to have to... we recorded it actually on camera.
God, it's so good.
It's that good, and you're gonna have to get the story because it's. Let's just say Randy's never been back to Mexico, and I think after hearing the story, it's a good idea that he stays in the United States.
So before El Chapo, there was Randy Newberg.
Yeah, totally. It was bad, and so folks, we're here, and I'm here with Hank Shaw. Mr. Hunt Gather Cook. And to be honest, I mean, I was telling you before we started that I first heard about Hank Shaw from Stephen Ranella on the Meat Eater TV show.
Yep.
And you proved him wrong that jackrabbit could be delicious.
He was a little bit skeptical.
Yeah. Throughout the show, it seemed like he was highly skeptical. Skeptical.
Well, I mean, he's from most Americans are like, jackrabbits, they're not fit to eat. And, as we were talking before, I mean, I came to hunting as an adult. So I didn't have any preconceived notions. So I'm like, well, that's a big animal. And I skinned it out. I'm like, well, it's got red meat. I'll cook it like a deer. And as it happens, a jackrabbit is essentially a micro deer. I mean, they're mild, they're venison-like, they're red meat, they're lean. There's nothing weird or off or stinky about them. They're just red meat.
What's the trick then? Like, how come people say they don't taste good?
There are a couple reasons that are some are mythology and some are legit. The mythology, like in America, jackrabbits have been poverty food twice.
Okay.
So first, when people came out into the prairies, and so the prairie homesteaders in the 1800s, sometimes jackrabbit was the only thing that they had to eat.
Yeah.
And then again in the Depression. So if your only protein is jackrabbit, there's no fat in it, so you can actually get malnourished. From
I don't think like rabbit starvation or something.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yep. And so that's part of it. Then the other piece to it is, I'm not going to lie, I mean, occasionally there are creepy crawlies that are around jackrabbits. I mean, one of the ones we shot yesterday had a botfly larva right in the small of its back, and it's horrific. It's like, it's this fly that hangs out and says, hey, that's a jackrabbit. So he's going to land on the fly, and he lays his egg just under the skin. And so this thing becomes like it's
like a host for this maggot.
It's just no. I wish it was just a maggot, dude. This thing is like, it looks like you should eat it. It's like a shrimp. I mean, like, it's just gnarly. It is genuinely horrifying. But they're never in the meat.
Okay,
they're only under the skin. So if you can get over your gag reflex from that, the meat's fine.
Does it smell?
No, I mean, they smell like rabbits, but...
No, but the botfly doesn't
No, there's no smell to it at all. And then sometimes they can have tapeworm cysts in the gut cavity, but I don't know anybody who eats rabbit guts.
Right.
And you don't eat rabbit sushi, so, we're braising that one all day today.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Okay, so some of it's real, some of it's not. You just turned off a lot of people with the botfly.
This is game, man.
And tapeworm.
Okay. So, like, all right. Have you ever hunted this is on the same Ranella hunt. Hilariously, apparently he didn't know that botfly larvae get into the nasal cavities of deer.
That's right.
And
that.
so he shot this blacktail in California, and so he's standing over it on the shoot, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I shot this blacktail here, and blah blah blah." Oh my god, dude! Because this thing just dropped right out of the nose.
Right. It's nasty. It's hard to imagine those things living up in that nose cavity.
Aren't you glad you have opposable thumbs?
Oh yes. You can pick my nose all day.
If I had one of those things, I'd be reaching for China. Oh,
it's bad. But there was more than one up there, wasn't there?
Oh, there might have been more than one.
Yeah, I can't remember. But
it's just one's enough.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure.
How did Hank Shaw come to be? Which I like to call you Shank when you're not around. Hank Shaw. I just sort of they blend.
That's not unfair, actually, because one of the things I'm known for is I'm an evangelist of deer shanks.
Yes.
So one of the things I'll shout at the camera and I'll say, "Don't ever grind your shanks ever again. Cook them like you would a lamb shank, and your life will be infinitely better, and you'll never get rid of them ever again." So calling me Shank is not unfair.
Nice.
I didn't start hunting as a kid. That's probably the biggest thing. I started as a 30-year-old, and 17 years later, I probably now spend 60 to 90 days in the field hunting, mostly small game.
Wow.
But
how did you get into hunting when you didn't do it at all?
It was interesting because one of my best friends where I was working in St. Paul at the Pioneer Press, the newspaper there. And one of my best friends was the outdoor writer there, a guy named Chris Niskanen. And so he was the outdoor writer, so of course he fished and hunted and everything. And we had been fishing the whole season. And then it was time to go hunting. And he's like, "Well, you should come hunting with me." I'm like, for whatever reason, something had lit in the back of my head, and I know what it was, because Niski had been kind of like buttering me up because, as you know, I'm a pretty good cook. So he'd be like, "Here's a mallard. Here's some venison.
Right.
Here's a pheasant. You should cook this venison. I bet you could cook this venison well." I'm like, first of all, I first thought it was, it's just a chicken. And it's not a chicken. It's close to a chicken, but it's not quite a chicken. And that's sort of we'll get into that. But at writ large, the wild game world is almost a thing, but it's not quite that thing. And it allows you to make some educated guesses as a cook.
Yeah, wild critters are just different than domestic.
But you can use the domesticated animal as a guide. We'll get into that. So anyway, so it's hunting season. I'm like, I kind of think I do want to do this. So I borrowed his Satori Lightning, and we're going to go pheasant hunting in Aberdeen, South Dakota. So we go out there, and Niski's like, "Have you ever shot a shotgun?" I'm like, "No, I've shot lots of rifles, but I've never shot a shotgun." He's like, "All right." So he grabs a whole bunch of milk jugs and throws them in the air, and it's like on the fifth one, I hit it. He's like, "All right, we're good."
Okay, I've never used milk jugs before.
It was a innovative way. Well, I mean, if you think about it.
How old are you now?
I'm 47.
No, then.
Then I'm about 30.
30.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hilariously, right now that I'm a really good bird hunter, because this is what I focus on birds a lot.
Yeah.
It's not inaccurate to throw a milk jug up in the air and think it's a pheasant, because they're like they're the slowest game bird that we shoot. Like of all the game birds that I hunt, they're the easiest to hit by far.
Really?
And so milk jug wasn't terribly inaccurate.
Yeah.
But I didn't hit the broadside of a barn on that hunt. But what I was really excited about was, so I've been a deckhand on commercial boats and on charter boats. And so when you're an actual fisherman, you read tides, you read weather, you read moon phases and seasons and everything. And ultimately the best time to fish for whatever fish it is could be Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And as opposed to most people, like, well, it's the weekend, I'm going to go fishing. Well, that could be a terrible time to go fishing. So you read water, and you understand structure underneath water to catch more fish. Niski was doing this on the land with pheasants.
Okay.
So he'd look at a field and say, "Yeah, there's no pheasants in that." I'm like, "Well, how'd you know?" But he was always right. We actually walked a few just because he humored me. But the ability to read land and the ability to be more in touch with everything around you. And the one thing that's different about hunting when I finally went is that it's a complete mind experience. You are in the now every moment you are hunting. You are, it's radically different from fishing. You can drink beer and shoot the while you are fishing, and we got a bite. If you do that when you're hunting, you're going to miss almost everything.
Yeah, it's true. Like you guys are out here hunting for quail, and as you're walking along, you have to be tuned in, or those quail are going to bust, and your chance is gone.
Right.
And it does take you out of your everyday world space.
Big time.
I'm not thinking about email. I'm not thinking about, my plane flight or whatever else I've got to do. I am locked into that moment. There's not very many things that do that to me.
No, to anybody. I mean, if you strip it all away, the ability to be in the now in a place that has created us as a species. Because, you can go back a million years and our genus has been hunting. And we've been us physically for somewhere between 100 and 200,000 years. So this is what we do. When we have, incisors for a reason. And when you step into that role, whether you get anything or not, it's like, it just feels natural, especially out here in a kind of a savanna desert sort of way. There's just this thing that feels just, this is where I should be.
Absolutely. Very true. So you go on the pheasant hunt, you realize that some of these things, you connect these dots.
Yep.
And then you're hooked.
Totally. Just badly hooked. And what's crazy is that I wanted to do it the right way. And in the world that I was living in at the time, the right way is you need to kill squirrels and rabbits and birds before you have the right to kill a deer. So if you can kill a squirrel in the woods, you can kill a deer in the woods. And I'm sad that more people don't think that, because they go right to turkeys or whitetails. And if you can successfully, consistently hunt squirrels in an Ohio woodlot, you are an infinitely better deer hunter than someone who can't.
I ate my first squirrel last year.
Really?
And
See, had you started with squirrels as a kid?
Dude, I have been missing out on squirrels for my whole life.
Doesn't Ranella call them the thinking man's chicken?
They were delicious. Absolutely delicious. I'm like, now I see, when I see squirrels, I see food.
Right?
Before, I didn't equate the two with like a delicious meal.
Oh, and to be sure, we're talking tree squirrels. When you live in the West, you're like, you eat ground squirrels? Like,
right.
No, they tend to have bubonic plague and hantavirus and some.
No, we were eating pine squirrels in Colorado.
Oh, wow. Little ones.
Yeah. But they're not that little over there. I mean, I guess they are compared to what you have back east and so forth, but Midwest. But they were a meal.
Yeah.
That's where I was telling you, I ate the kidneys.
The little kidneys, yeah.
The little kidneys taste like bacon.
Yep.
And when you've been backpacking for like 7 days, oh, wow. We bring a little olive oil, and like you were saying, what is it?
Hunger is the best spice.
That's right. So until I had been watching Ranella and other shows, I hadn't really even considered small game other than duck. I had duck hunted for years.
So where did you grow up hunting?
I grew up in Oregon City, Oregon.
Ah, okay.
And
so there's not a big squirrel culture in Oregon City.
Zero that I knew of. And they're everywhere.
Yeah.
There's squirrels everywhere. And I never hunted them. Never even thought to. And so we would catch crawdads, and we would go fishing, and we would go duck hunting. That's kind of my smaller game type stuff. And then outside of that, it was just big game. It's deer and elk. And I feel like, and the duck hunting was fun. I did it for I think 6 or 7 years. And then anytime I felt like I could be duck hunting, but I could also be deer hunting, I ended up just going deer hunting.
See, we flipped it. If I get a deer in the freezer, I'm like, oh, sweet. The whole rest of the year is birds.
I try to find another deer. But then I got more into cooking after watching a lot of Meat Eater, actually. They even ate a coyote, and I was like, well, if they eat a coyote, I guess you can eat anything.
I mean, now he's going to get a chance to make fun of us because we're probably about to eat a Kiwanis Monday.
That's right. So true. Touche. But when I watched one of Ranella's episodes where it was bone-in cooking. And so that was the first time I had taken a shank off of a deer, and we actually had bear shanks.
Yeah, a bear, Orso Bearco.
And we tied a little string around the deal, and we followed the whole recipe like exact. And we cooked an entire bone-in ham off of the deer, and all this stuff. We did everything for Thanksgiving dinner, the whole Ranella bone-in deal, and bone marrow. We did a lot of that, and I started experimenting. And bone broth is like one of my favorite things to make. And we shot a moose up in British Columbia, and the marrow inside that is just massive.
Oh yeah.
And so the thing we've been doing is we froze all the bones and kept a bunch of anything we could keep. We kept, and then we started making bone stock out of all that. And now I'm getting more into the cooking side of the hunting. Before it was like grind it all up and you make burger. And I think a lot of hunters do that.
They do. Burger and jerky.
Yeah. And so, but I think,
and then, let's just be clear. I like burger and I like jerky. But,
yeah. But that's where it opened my mind to all these other options that were delicious, really delicious. And I hadn't done any of that my whole life with big game. And it seems like that's a common theme among hunters.
There's a lot of that. In fact, I was at an event for my second book, which is a duck and goose cookbook called Duck, Duck, Goose, of course.
Brilliant.
And I'm at this event, and we cooked a lot of duck, and an old rancher dude walks up to me. He's probably about 5'4", bow-legged, big old hat, with the Western style shirt and everything. He had to be like 70s or 80s years. I mean, he was like off the range, like leather dude,
Yeah.
And so he's like, "You Hank Shaw?" I said, "Yeah, who wants to know?" So you do that duck cookbook where you cook duck like a steak? I don't know why I made the Idaho guy Southern, but
I love it.
It's my ranch accent.
That's right.
And I said, "Yeah, that'd be me." And he pokes me right in the chest. He goes, "Good on you. I just realized I've been effing it up for 50 years." And walks away.
Good on you. Yeah, that's true. So you get into hunting, but then you told me you went to school. And while you're going to school.
Yep, I'm working in restaurants. So I have a restaurant background. I never ran a restaurant. I've never been an executive chef. I've been line cooks and sous chefs. So kind of, the worker bees in restaurants. But that's a very, very good background for anybody who wants to seriously cook. So I'm not scared of cooking apps for 200 people. Like, that doesn't scare me at all. And nor am I scared about doing a fancy, 7-course for 20, so it's solo, so it gives you the professional grounding to know how to move in a kitchen, to know all of these cues, like, when I had to write down how to cook a duck breast, for example, I had to sit there, and it took me several times to do it because there are all these sort of subtextual clues that like, oh, well, for example, when you're cooking a duck breast and the tone of the sizzle heightens, it gets higher pitched, that means most of the moisture has been cooked out of the skin. You need to flip it. But otherwise, it's going to sound like bacon. And if you're not really listening for that, you're not necessarily going to hear that. And then there's also a fat side and a skinny side to the sides of a duck breast. Well, you can read anybody's duck breast cooking instructions in print, and no one, except for me, has told you to stand them up on end on the fat side down because there's a little fat pad on there. You sear that off for just a minute or 2 minutes, and then you get a better rounded cooked. So all these little sort of small things. When you're cooking 50 steaks a night, every night, you know how to cook steak. And it helped me a lot. And the most important thing that I do right now for anything is how many days have you been hunting coos deer?
Like 4 or 5 days, yeah.
Right? So like if you get one tomorrow, you're not going to want to mess it up when you cook it, right?
Not to mention that it feels like it'd be a miracle if I do.
Well, let's hope you get one.
I'm expecting to.
Yeah.
But
the thing is,
I don't want to screw it up.
So many people have this. So what happens with so many game, hunter cooks is that they know these 4 recipes for whatever it is that they're cooking that they know they'll eat. Right. And they know their family will eat. And so they're, okay, this is how we cook duck. This is the only way we cook duck because we know people will eat it. Or deer or elk or pheasants.
Why fix what's not broken?
Well, that's because they have stage fright is what it is.
Yeah.
So if they look at a recipe on the internet and say, well, that looks tasty, but I don't want to mess it up. I only have one.
Oh,
deer
I'm guilty
this
of that. I'm guilty of that.
Yep.
Like if I make sausage or I'm gonna like smoke some, I'm like I'm gonna use I don't want to ruin it.
Mm-hmm. Because you work so hard to get it.
Yeah. And I also feel like I have to eat it. So whatever it ends up being, I am morally obligated to gut it out. Yeah.
So where I come in is that every recipe on the website or in any of my books has been heavily tested, not only by me, but by actual humans. Mm-hmm. So I don't let my chef friends test my recipes in any of my books. I have lots of readers, and they're the best readers in the world. And I say, hey man, I got a new book coming out, and does anybody out there have rails? Does anybody out there have, squirrels or pheasants, or I need someone who's got deer shanks. Because I have a recipe that I think is really good, but I need to know that what I write is what you read. And anybody who's ever sent a text message knows that what you write is not necessarily what your girlfriend or wife or somebody reads.
Right.
So I'm bending over backwards to make sure that if you take the dive and make one of my recipes, it's going to work.
That user friendly.
Yeah.
When did you come out with your first book?
2011.
2011. But you had a blog first.
Yes. I started Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook in 2007. Okay. So I still had a day job at that point. I was a political newspaper reporter.
Dude, you are the most interesting dude.
I covered politics at the state and federal level for 18 years. And It was amazing for a while, and then it was less amazing towards the end. And it's sort of what got me into writing about food and doing more of this sort of recipe development was that, and I'm sure you can relate to this, that at some point you've had a job that you were very good at, but you didn't really love it.
Right. How did your journalism career inform your cooking career?
So two things, two big things. One, it teaches you how to do research. Now, I went to graduate school at Wisconsin, so that also helps me be a researcher. So, for example, in this book, I have an entire section on hanging upland game birds. Hanging them for, everybody's heard these stories. Oh, you hang them until the neck falls off. Well, that's an urban myth. There's a lot of actual science behind it. So if you know how to read a scientific paper, which I do because I had to as a journalist, you can then there's this whole new area of data that you can bring to bear on whatever it is that, like, for example, as a deer hunter, if you read all of these scientific papers about food habits of deer in this particular region or rutting behavior or whatever, you understand the animal better to bring it into your house. And I read the pieces about, what will inform me when it's in the house. So the ability to actually get real data and not just anecdote is because the plural of anecdote, ladies and gentlemen, is not data.
Right. So
bringing real data. The other one is not thinking that my farts don't stink. Like if you think you're the greatest thing ever, right? Then you're not going to listen to good information from other people. So as a good journalist, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. What matters is that you get the right people to talk to you to get the story, whatever that story is. And so, this is why I do, Hunt, Gather, Cook forum on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm answering questions all the time. It's super important for me to answer I think I've answered every question everybody's ever sent me. Not the same day. So like if you've got something on the stove, don't text me and expect me to answer. 'Cause it could be in the middle of Arizona chasing rabbits and stuff. But I'm going to answer eventually. And the reason is because for every time I help somebody cook their game better, somebody's got some example that makes me smarter or some technique that makes me smarter. Like I showed you how to clean a gizzard today earlier.
Yep.
That method is not the method in my cookbook. The method in my cookbook is much more involved, but I'm on tour and I'm in Arkansas and this old lady is like, that's a stupid way to cook gizzard. Like, okay, how do you do it? Give me that. And she just goes, and she fillets the meat off of the center thing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's much better.
You're like, I have been learned.
Right? So, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, I feel that because of the interaction I have with Hunt, Gather, Cook Nation, that I'm smarter, but so is everybody else, because it's funny because if he hasn't told you yet, they shot a coat on Monday this morning.
Which I'm still not sure what it is. It's kind of a monkey,
raccoon,
meerkat,
bear thing,
ringtail.
It's man, bear, pig.
Yeah, I Googled it, and there's a consensus that people aren't sure what it is.
Right? It looks, the meat sort of looks like pork.
And hopefully,
well, we're cooking it. So
we come back to camp and we're like, we want to cook it, Hank. We've been hoping Hank would help us out a little bit. We come back to camp and Hank's like, apparently people don't really eat this.
Yeah.
Like, you can't find much online at all.
Nope.
So we're in uncharted territory.
We are
today.
in uncharted territory. But the funny thing is that that's one of the very few things that we really are in. So on this forum, there's been long threads about the pros and cons of eating lynx hindquarters and stuff like that, and it was weird stuff. And it's all like there's been multiple seal threads of which seals are better than other seals, and I'm not. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, I mean
that's deep.
It's like, well, you really want the bearded seals because they're not as mean. It's like, this is not my world, but it's interesting because people are legit. They're serious about it.
Yeah, I expected this to be similar to a raccoon, but you're saying the meat's
much lighter.
Interesting.
It's way lighter.
Yeah. So when you wrote your first book, so first the blog, you did the blog for you're talking at least 4 or 5 years before you did your book?
I got the book deal in 2010, so 3 years after I started it, because it takes a year to make a book.
So when did you hit the mainstream? When did people start to when did you quit your day job?
I quit my day job in 2010.
Okay. So you ran that blog about 3 years.
Yep.
And then you quit your day job.
Yep.
And how'd that feel?
Scary. Super scary. So I'm a thrifty Scotsman.
Yeah.
We're a thrifty people. So I live in a tiny little house, and at the time I was driving a 2000 Toyota Tacoma that had it ultimately had 363,000 miles on it before I sold it. But so it's not like I'm living large, right? So what I did was okay. So if anybody here knows about the newspaper woes, so newspapers are not what they were 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. There's been big purges of qualified staff, and just the industry itself is taking a beating. So the beginning of that is they laid off tons of people. So anybody who made any kind of money at all, they would lay off. So I kind of saw that this was coming. Mm-hmm. So I started to save money, and I saved more money. So eventually, when I cut the cord and jumped off that ledge, I had a year's worth of expenses in the bank.
That's what I did with Gritty Bowmen.
Yeah.
Yep. No debt and a year's worth of expense, a little more than that.
Yep. And a plan, if this goes south.
I can always go back
to
the old job if need be. But that wasn't the goal.
Right. It's the same deal.
Yeah. Very cool. So then you write your first book, and how does it do?
It does well. It does. I mean, it's hilarious.
And this one's Duck, Duck, Goose.
No, the first one is Hunt, Gather, Cook.
Oh, that's
this is the one that has a little bit of everything in it.
Yeah.
And it's, I lost a huge fight with the editor. It's the only book I have that's not in color.
Oh, really?
And I'm super pissed off about that to this day. Super pissed off. I mean, the book's been in 11 printings.
Yeah.
And they never called me back and say, hey man, you want to do color? And it's like, yes, we want to do color in this. But, so if you look at the Amazon reviews, it's it's a great book, but I wish it was in color. I'm like, yeah, so do I. I'll actually comment on the Amazon, yeah, I wish it was color too, and I lost that fight. So but it does well. It gets reviewed in the New York Times. I'm on CNN. I mean, it's right at I got lucky. So it's right at the cusp of kind of a wild foods movement that we're still in.
Yeah.
But this is right when it was starting to happen. And because I can do everything, because I'm an angler and a hunter and a forager, so I know mushrooms and plants as well as I do, big and small game and fish. It made me useful to mainstream media. So I got a lot of exposure at that point.
So then, as you've gone through this process and you've done these different books, what's the progression of your writing in these books that you've produced?
They're all sort of deep dives in the topic. Okay. So Duck Duck Goose is about waterfowl. Buck Buck Moose, funny story. So Buck Buck Moose.
That's genius, by the way.
Thank you.
Moose, Buck Buck Moose. It's like
thank
genius.
you. Okay, so you like the story then. So when I said, hey man, I want to do a venison cookbook, all the mainstream publishers like, that's too niche. These are from publishers that are doing like Swedish tea cake books. Like,
right.
Really? So I'm super frustrated. So finally, I get an offer from a big publisher in New York City, and from the get-go, I'm like, I don't know that I get along with this editor. I'm not going to name names, but I don't really get along with this editor. This isn't right. Because one of the first things she said was, I hate the title. And the second thing she said was, I hate the photos. And Holly does all the photos. So I'm like, you're done.
and tell people who Holly is.
So Holly is I guess if we had Kamala, she'd be my wife. But we've been together since 2001. Okay. And we were both journalists at the same time for a while. And she's out quail hunting as we speak, actually.
And she's a crack shot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's a better duck hunter than I am.
She came home with the bacon.
She did. The rabbit bacon.
That's right. That we're going to eat soon.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And she's a comms director for the California Waterfowl Association, which would be like Ducks Unlimited, but for only California.
Yeah. Very cool.
So we actually did a Kickstarter for Buck Buck Moose. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, we raised, that song, Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster. So I raised the money I need for that book in 19 hours.
No way.
My head exploded. Like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
So we ended up with $93,000 on that Kickstarter, and it allowed me to make an infinitely better book.
Now everybody's going to go try to do a Kickstarter.
Good luck. It wasn't all, sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
But it gave us the money to do shirts and hoodies and a really nice book, and I could go on book tour and not, lose all my savings.
Yeah.
And the book did really well. So we founded H&H Books. So we created a publishing company. And Buck Buck Moose has sold 30,000 copies since 2016.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, in the cookbook world, it's pretty good.
Yeah. H&H.
Yep. Holly and Hank.
Holly and Hank. That's brilliant.
Yep.
Okay. So you do Buck Buck Moose, and that's primarily, I'm assuming,
it's everything that has antlers or things of the male of which have antlers. So
got it.
So it's all the cervids and antelope, and I touch on sheep a little bit, but I don't have a ton of experience with sheep because I'm neither rich nor lucky.
You and me both. So okay, and then fourth book.
The fourth book is what you're holding in your hand, and that's Pheasant, Quail, Cottontail. And as you're seeing a pattern, I really, really like fun titles, and it's partly because
titles matter.
Titles matter, but it's also like I'm serious about what I do, but I don't like to take myself too seriously because you never get out of this life alive anyway.
Yeah.
So have some fun.
Totally.
And so this is all small game. So this is turkeys and pheasants and quail and cottontail and rails and snipe and so it's everything that's not in the other two books. There's no Coatimundi recipes. Sorry.
That's next.
Maybe in the Coatimundi, raccoon, and possum. The random tidbits of the wild game world.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Oh God, I hope it's good.
Yeah, we'll report back, folks. We'll let you know.
So the coolest thing about this book is that because Buck Buck Moose did so well, I didn't have to ask everybody for money. So I didn't have to do a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So that book funded this book.
Yeah.
And so that's, first of all, yay. I don't have to make that ask of everybody like I did with a Kickstarter.
Right.
And the second thing is I got into I'm in a partnership with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever on this. So it's not their book, it's my book, but I'm a life member of Quail Forever because I love chasing quail. And I decided that I'm going to donate a portion of every book sold back to Pheasants and Quail Forever for habitat.
Really?
Because I'm finally in a position where I can give back to the things that I chase. And I think it's important. I mean, I know you guys talk about this a lot. It's that, if you hunt elk, you might want to consider being an RMEF.
Absolutely.
Or you might want to consider being in one of the mule deer groups or whatever. But for the birds, especially like grouse, it's super important to do what you can to give back to those birds.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking through your book here. General, how do you say it?
General Tso.
General Tso's
Dude,
pheasant.
You just opened the book to crack.
Dude, and I'm looking here, okay? Many of us have eaten the General's chicken at cheap steam table Chinese restaurants. Gloppy, overbreaded, and so sweet that you fall into glycemic shock afterward. It's just not good. And you know this is so if you've been lucky enough to. I've done this, man. I have eaten at some top-notch Chinese places and then the knockoff. So what I like about this is you get into a little more than that. This is that perfect plate, and it has a history. General Tso was an actual historic figure, and you go into this whole thing. I just want to read the book.
Yeah,
even if I don't cook it.
I mean, I like that though. It's like I'm an essayist. Probably, someday I'll write a book of essays, but I get to do that in these books and entertain you as well as be useful.
By all accounts, Pang loathed the American version of this recipe. No, this is very cool. And so one of the things two questions. I want to get into common mistakes that people make when they're trying to cook wild game.
Right.
When they try to carry over a recipe from their chicken at the store to pheasant. Okay. And then, but I also wanted to understand, as you've written now 4 books, how have the books evolved? Are you learning more as you go? And if so, what does that look like?
So it's very true. Cause you do anything over and over again, you get better. So this is the biggest one. This is 336 pages. So the duck book was 275. So there's more recipes. I know how to publish a book because this is the second book that our company has published, and it's a better book. I found a better printer. I found better paper. I found, more people to test recipes. It just everything is tighter. Everything is more professional. Everything is more useful because that's the ultimate thing is to be useful.
Yeah.
You're looking at the icons right now.
Yeah.
So with small game. If I General Tso's pheasant, which you just looked at, there is no reason you can't do that with boneless rabbit meat or with quail or with chucker or with ruffed grouse. So when you see that recipe, you'll see on the side a whole bunch of icons of silhouettes of all the other chapters in the book. And each of that icon represents the chapter and a set of birds that's in the chapter.
Where that meat would be suitable for that dish.
So there's no reason you couldn't use a wild turkey for General Tso's.
And then I suppose, so what would happen if it just wouldn't taste good if you used possum?
If you used a red meat, for example, because General Tso's is a white meat. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. Okay. So I've done Kung Pao chicken, and I've done that. I normally do that with pheasants or grouse, but I did Kung Pao venison, and that's actually on the website, and it was damn good. So it's just like if you go to a Chinese, we're talking Chinese, and believe me, the book is way more than just Chinese recipes, but
yeah,
like that, the beer rocks. So it's a bread bun. Anybody from Kansas is nodding their head because it's a bread bun filled with yummy things like meat and sauerkraut and onions and such.
Yeah, we would eat stuff like that in Japan.
Okay.
They cooked a bread around some kind of meat or plum or something.
Right, exactly. And so these are big in Kansas and Nebraska. In Nebraska, they call them runzas. But you look at the icons, you can do anything. Any meat will work in that.
Wow. Possum's in here.
Kind of. It's a little bit of an in-joke because the icon the artist did for the possum is so cute.
Yeah.
That we wanted to put it in there.
Just randomly. Here and there.
Yeah, just here and there. In places where, it'll work.
It'll work. You can pull this one off. Yeah. Possum, I see beaver.
Yep.
Tell me about, some of the issues with wild game.
I think the easiest, we can talk as long as you want about it, but it all boils down to this. People cook the tender parts too much and the tough parts too little. That's what it is.
That's it.
That's it. So overcooked backstrap, overcooked duck breast, overcooked pheasant breast, undercooked pheasant legs, undercooked, shank or whatever. If you treat them like that, then, if you do things right, then oh, wow, these are like, I eat the front of the deer way faster than I eat the back of the deer. I am much more, the shanks go first, the shoulders, the neck, always gone first.
We do the neck a lot in just a slow cooker.
You can pull it and make Mexican food out of it. It's the best because
it breaks apart all that tissue.
In a deer, which doesn't have any internal fat. So there's maybe somebody will come up with a picture of a marbled venison, but I've never seen marbled venison. So all their fat's going to be on the outside, so they're inherently lean. So your substitute for fat is connective tissue. So that's in the neck and that's in the shoulder and that's in the shanks. So if you cook it slow and low and moist, braise it, all that connective tissue melts. So when you pull that meat, it gives you the illusion of it being rich and fatty, but it's not. And
it tastes like it is.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
When people leave the neck, I'm just like, you're leaving the best part.
Especially on like an elk.
Yeah. I used to we used to grind it.
You can do that.
But now we take the neck and we make just a bunch of roasts and we just tie like kitchen string around it. And we just...
Have you ever gotten the whistlers off an elk?
No.
So if you do this, you can see these muscles here.
Yeah.
Well, an elk's got them too. It's what he uses to bugle with. And it's these two long, cylinders of meat that are right above the trachea. And on a deer, it's too small to really, throw in grind or stew meat or whatever. But on an elk, they're like yay big.
Right.
They're about that thick.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. We pull those off. I just don't know what they are.
Yeah, they call them whistlers.
Okay.
And so the meat all goes in the same grain. It all goes lengthwise on that.
Right.
cylinder.
It does.
So you can cook that whole cylinder medium rare and cut it into little medallions. It's almost as good as the tenderloin.
Wow.
Now,
I'm going to do that next.
If you've got a friend who's bugging you for like tenderloin or backstrap, you just give him that.
Psych. Okay.
It's pretty close.
So tell me this. I shot a moose in British Columbia, and my hunting buddy Aaron, he shot a moose, and we cooked them both, like right there on the grill. And his moose melted in your mouth, just fell apart. And my moose was hard. And it tastes good.
Similar rack?
But some folks that have followed the show have seen this. My moose had a wound on it that was about as long as my forearm.
Wow.
Where it had been stabbed by a tine, and it had gone all the way, from back here in mid body and up through the back of the shoulder. And so when we broke it down and we cut open the moose, and then we were messing with it, pus. At least a gallon to 2 gallons of pus came out of that.
That's so gnarly.
Hole. And it smelled like death. I mean, it was one of the most. We were all trying not to puke. And Aaron Aaron and both the guide there. They all have like strong stomachs,
right?
But they were all bent over, trying to hold on.
That's gnarly.
And so it was bad. We cut away, and some people warned me that it could be bloodborne, this infection.
Could be.
And so there was some risk in eating the meat and stuff. And so we did a little digging, and by then I had already eaten it. I didn't think anything of it. We cut away from the wound, and we took all this meat. But one thing about it, though, is that all I could think of was maybe stress or something from that wound causing an issue. I'm not sure, but man, Aaron's moose is like so tender and soft, and mine is not.
If it's not that, the only other thing I can think of is was it cut up in rigor? Like, did you cut it when it was in rigor mortis, or was it out of rigor?
What's that mean?
So dead things get stiff. So you think something dies and it's loose, and then at some point, fairly quickly, it gets all stiff. Rigor mortis, and then over a certain period of time, that'll fade, and the animal will get loose again. So if you cut muscle off bone while it's in rigor, it gets what's called shortening. So if you were to hold your bicep out like that, and you were to cut right here, this would fold up like a Venetian blind.
Your bicep would.
And it tightens. And so everything gets...
Shrinks.
Yeah, it goes like that. And you can cook it out eventually, but on a back strap, it's going to be super tough. So if your animal is already in rigor mortis, it's like you can't bend his legs, you might not want to take the back strap off until the next day. I mean, what I do is, if you're in a backcountry, you do what you do. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But if you can, you get to it and take that back strap off before it gets into rigor, then you're okay. Or a couple days after, because on a moose, it takes 24 to 48 hours for it to get through rigor.
And that makes a difference. That makes
difference. Huge difference. You hear it all the time. I shot this doe, but it was really tough. Or I shot this young pig, but it was really tough. Well, that's why.
I never knew that.
Yep. It's a butcher's thing.
So the animal, because it goes into rigor, there are times where I'll have we'll be in a hurry and we'll actually move the head up because we want to photograph it or whatever. And you can walk away and come back, half hour later after you've grabbed your pack and all your stuff, and that thing will be locked in that position.
That's rigor mortis.
But you're saying if you either want to get to it before that stage, or you want to get to it after.
Yeah, so like if you're stuck, right, and you've otherwise the bears are going to get it. You do what you do what you do, but you take off as much on the bone as possible.
Okay, I got it. So that's what we did with the rear and the front shoulders and all that. They're all bone in.
That's a tough hike.
Yeah, it's so the bone broth is so.
I know. I'd have done the same thing.
So good. I'm just gonna come clean. He wasn't far from the quad.
Oh, perfect.
So, Aaron's, we had to hike it off a hill, but we were back on some flats, and we were able to get.
Did it jump in the water?
It didn't. It was up in a big clearing. In fact, I almost shot a moose in British Columbia on this mountain goat hunt I showed you that little clip of. And I'm like, I'm going to shoot him. I'll shoot him. Just a little bullwinkle, but I'm just picturing all the meat. I've never shot a moose. And Aaron's like, you're not shooting him. I'm like, why? He's like, he's in the water.
Yep.
I'm like, well, and he's like, no, you don't get it. Like, you kill him there, he might just go on down river, or you're going to be neck deep trying to get him out.
1,000-pound moose. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that they're tall?
Dude, so tall. So yeah, we didn't shoot him. We were trying to get him out of the water so we could take a shot. And never got the shot, but yeah, I was so rigor. If you have the option though, once it's gotten stiff, how long does it take for it to
a day?
A day.
Mm-hmm. When you can bend that leg again, real easy.
So you could get to the back straps right away.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Or you're taking quarters off. Mm-hmm. So if you've got quarters bone on, you're fine.
Yeah,
but do your fine work a day or two later or more.
Right.
No, this leads us to kind of dry aging. Mm-hmm. You get into dry aging a lot with big game, and the thing you need to remember is like it's not. There's no crime to dry age a whole animal, but you don't need to. You dry age anything that you're going to cook medium rare. So backstrap and a hind leg, no shanks, no shoulder, no
point,
no ribs, no point, because you're going to cook the heck out of it. You're just not going to get that dry age flavor.
I hung the moose quarter in the garage for, I don't know, a couple weeks, and no big deal. I mean, cleaned it up, and you can just see the meat changes a different color. It's just got that aged color.
You got to cut that rind off.
Yeah, I cut the rind off, and then underneath, it's just a totally different meat than the stuff that didn't age.
Yep.
Like, I'm looking at the two, hind quarters, one that just came fresh, and one that's aged for 2 weeks, just hanging.
Mm-hmm. Some of the best venison I've ever eaten were big old trophy animals that were heavily dry aged.
Yeah. Well, dry aging seems simple, at least where I'm at in Colorado, where it's fairly dry. There was some good airflow, and it was cool.
Yeah.
And
you can't do it if you don't have those conditions.
I know people will do it inside they'll put it inside a fridge, or they've created a dry age.
Yeah, you can do that.
Deal.
For like, a saddle of venison or something, or a hind leg.
One thing though, it was pointless when I shot a whitetail and aged any of it. By the time I cut the rind off, I felt like I wasted so much meat. I was frustrated.
Hind leg?
It was a whitetail. I mean, it wasn't a big one.
I've seen 400-pound whitetails.
Well, not this one. I mean, there was still meat there, but it wasn't as much as I had wanted.
Yeah,
I was
and the thing about dry aging backstrap, you have to leave it on the bone. Because then you only have the one surface that gets all gnarly. And that surface got silver skin on it anyway.
Yeah. Well, that would definitely be better. I mean, that's what I try to do whenever I can. I try to leave as much meat on the bone as I can.
Yep. Just take a Sawzall on either side of it and just whack through it.
And then I love to take the shanks and Sawzall those.
You can use a pocket knife to get shank off. You know.
No. But I mean later when I.
Oh, you mean like big shanks? Okay. Mm-hmm. I shoot a lot of little deer.
I'm talking like an elk shank, or a bear. Those bear shanks were
long,
huge.
Yeah,
they were because the bone is just so heavy in the forearms.
And the forearms are very long,
and it was delicious.
Yeah.
So trichinosis and all. I mean, we just cooked it all.
You wouldn't get it because you're cooking ossobuco.
My brother got it though. Dumb idiot.
From bears?
Yeah, my bear, same bear I ate, but he didn't cook it. After I lectured him. So there's like 17 years between us.
Okay.
And so what I'm saying is I'm more mature and grown up and wise. And so
or you saw the episode that Ranella gave
I saw that
and
too.
Everybody else,
But sure enough, it was not long after that either. And I warned him. I sent him home with meat and a thermometer, and he still ended up not cooking it all the way and got trick. It was pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, it's not to be messed with.
Yeah. So in all your wild game eating, you haven't experienced any issues with parasites?
Knock on wood, I have never been parasitized, poisoned by poisoned by mushrooms, or ever gotten a foodborne illness. The closest was there was a particular bolete mushroom that's a well-known edible called the velvet bolete in the East Coast, and we cooked a few up, and I had this deep feeling of feeling unease in the middle of the night. Like I'm certain it was this mushroom, but I didn't puke, didn't have to go to the doctor or anything like that in the past. But that's the closest I've ever come.
Yeah. Well, Ranella, when he talked about you, he was complimenting you for not just your, cooking your quail or your rabbit, but it was all the dishes that go with it. So you cover that kind of stuff in your books. We ate, what was it in there? Corn.
Oh, the pozole? With hominy in it? Yeah.
I probably have had hominy, but I
mostly you'd find it in pozole.
Dude, it was good. Really good. So those other recipes, you try to so we're in Arizona, we're hunting coos deer, jackrabbits, cottontails,
Mearns quail.
Get other quail?
Duck, Mexican duck.
Duck.
Yeah.
There were lots of ducks. Coatimundi.
Yes, Coatimundi.
Coatimundi.
Yeah.
And what else? We're missing some stuff.
I don't know that we are. We've got cottontails and jacks, quail, a couple kinds of ducks.
Were there other species of quail?
Yeah,
there's
3 in Arizona. There's the Gambel's quail, the Mearns, and then there are some scale quail here as well. So,
as you're creating these dishes this week, and we've been benefiting greatly, you're adding to them foods from this local area,
right?
And so, talk a little bit about that, and where we're at in Arizona. I mean, one of the reasons that we're here is to experience the small game opportunities here, and eat it and enjoy it.
Yeah,
and you're mixing up some things that you find. How do you know about this stuff?
Well, like I said, I've been a wild plant guy since I was a little kid. So you pick up new plants every time you go to a new region. Like, well, people eat that? Well, how do they eat that? And then you taste it, and then it's either good or it's not good. Or sometimes you figure out you cooked it wrong. And, not every mushroom is good fried in butter. So the one of the things I'm going to serve you guys tonight is something called the cholla bud. So you've seen millions of cholla cactuses all over the place.
All over.
They're evil. But in the springtime, they set flowers, beautiful flowers. Sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they're magenta. And the flower buds get about that big.
About 2 inches, inch and a half.
Inch and a half. And so you knock those off into a basket, and then you kind of
Toss them
around and knock all those spines off of. And then what we're left with is this little bud thing that tastes like a cross between okra and artichoke heart. And they're good fresh, but they're better dried and then rehydrated. So when you dry them, they get super small because cacti are mostly water.
Yeah.
And then you rehydrate them and then you cook them in chicken broth or whatever. And they taste almost exactly like artichoke hearts. And that's a trick. And in fact, that big crazy peak that we've been seeing off to the west, that's part of the Tohono O'odham Indian reservation, and they're the ones I learned that from.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So you can't get much more local than that.
No.
Except for barrel cactus.
Is that from a barrel cactus?
Yeah, so this is a barrel cactus fruit. So it's the only cactus fruit that doesn't have spines on it. And you basically eat it like a green pepper. So it's got seeds in the center. Mm-hmm. So you'd eat around it, and it tastes like a combination of green apple and green pepper.
Where do you find this?
On a barrel cactus.
What time of year?
Right now.
Really?
Yeah, I picked it yesterday.
So those barrel cactus, they're gnarly.
Oh, yeah.
And I stepped on a barrel cactus.
That was a tactical error.
Yeah. I had put on the sneaky feet tennis shoes.
Oh.
Like this super minimalist tennis shoe. So I could be stealthy ninja through the desert. And one of those like clusters of spines.
Oh, yeah.
Came off the cactus and it was on the ground, probably from an old dead cactus. And I stepped on it, and it was like a nail, and it drove right through the heel of my shoe. I mean, you're talking an inch sole, and then into my foot. And I hit the ground like I'd been shot by a sniper.
They're kind of evil. and then you landed right on other cactus.
And then I was like, how did it get through my thick-soled shoe?
Oh, yeah.
And then I looked under there, and then I pulled it out.
You notice the soles that I wear on my boots.
Those are hefty. I pulled it out, and those spines are like nails.
Oh, yeah.
Like tapered nails.
And then they have a hook on the end of them.
Yeah. There was like 3 or 4 with hooks, and then there was like 4 that came out like 4 corners that were straight, perfectly straight.
No bueno.
That's what got me, was the straight right through, man. Right through.
That happened the last time we were on. We hunted Gamble's quail about a month ago, and just not here, but also in Arizona. Mm-hmm. Guy just boom. Oh, right through his foot.
Yeah. I mean, I figure it's not going to kill you, you know?
Probably.
You just tough it out. But this place, I'm like bleeding. The first day I was bleeding up and down my arms and my legs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, scratches everywhere.
But I got a lot of that in Alberta, too. Got a lot in Texas and Oklahoma. So,
this little, ever make it like an antelope stalk? You're like, oh, no! There's like an acre of those little cacti right between you and the...
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wear leather.
Yeah. I got to figure it out. I got to figure out that sneaky situation in these dry desert climates, something with the feet.
Oh, it's like still hunting on potato chips.
I don't know. So we had a slight wind yesterday, and there was rocks like everywhere, and there were no cactus. Slipped off the boots, just had socks on. Ninja quiet. And even then, just the grass hitting your pants and your feet just kind of barely making sound. They're deer like 100 yards away, zoop, zoop, right on you. And you can't be any quieter, but I did hear from Jonathan that it's a little dry.
Yeah, it's a lot dry.
It's more dry right now than it typically is.
Right, which is making it hard for quail hunting.
Yeah, that's right. So this thing comes off a barrel cactus.
Yep. You want to wait till they're yellow.
It doesn't have spines.
Nope.
You wait till they're yellow. What's the nutritional value here?
Heck if I know. They taste good.
Must be good then.
Yeah, I mean, they taste good. Like, everybody asks me, so do you all what you do for health? Like, no. I do everything because it tastes really good. I mean, I guess I'm healthy, but
Yeah. No, I would assume it's not like hormone injected stuff,
right?
Here.
And it's not like I'm eating, drinking Mountain Dew every day or eating big tubs of bacon fat.
Yeah. So have you eaten these?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Can I eat this?
Yeah, I would gnaw around the edges because in the center will be like a seed thing.
So you just kind of eat along the edges here?
Mm-hmm. It's about like a 1/4 inch thick. And it's like green apple, green pepper.
That's good.
Right? Mm-hmm. Everything in the desert seems to eat them too. So like it's you're lucky if you can get a barrel cactus full of them.
That's really good.
Right? Not so bad.
It's like a sour apple.
Yeah.
Like you said, sour apple with a little pepper.
Mm-hmm. Like green pepper, like bell pepper.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that.
Yeah, it'll be good when you're out in the desert, and like
trying to survive.
So the myth is that you can cut the top of the barrel cactus out and drink the water that's inside. Well, that'll make you violently ill. But these you can eat.
Really? Mm-hmm. So there's a myth about that? I mean...
Yeah, people say, oh yeah, if you're in the desert, just chop the top of a barrel cactus off and drink the moisture inside. Like, yeah, you can, but then you're going to get massive cramps and diarrhea. If that's your jam, go for it. I mean...
So tell me, why is that?
It's just something in the makeup of the cactus. It's, almost all our poisons and toxins and everything, they're all plant-based. Like, because think about it. If I'm a plant, I can't really walk around.
Can't run away.
So I'm just going to be sitting here filling myself full of poison that I don't care about. But if you eat me, then you're effed. Yeah.
You'll pay the price.
So that's what they do. And so whatever it is, it keeps it from getting eaten.
So have you ever cooked with these?
I've not actually cooked them. I've just sort of eaten them as a trail nibble. I might actually do some cooking with them.
You're right. You have to nibble around that center.
Yeah.
It's not as...
The center's kind of fibrous.
Yeah. And it's a lot thicker than I thought.
It's a little bit like a desert rose hip. If you've ever eaten rose hips.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what else is around here that you could, go after?
Well, it depends on the season. So the mesquite trees all have mesquite beans on them at some point. And then they dry out. And then you need a pretty significant, mill to mill those beans into flour. But it makes a fantastic flour. Like if you make chocolate chip cookies and substitute half of the regular flour for mesquite bean flour, they're like the best chocolate chip cookies ever. Because there's kind of a cinnamon, all spicy, coffee-ish taste to the flour. Mm-hmm. It's sweet, sort of naturally sweet. You can actually make mesquite bean syrup with those same dried beans you take a bunch of mesquite beans and crack them all up and you put them in a crock pot full of water, leave them for a day or so, and it slowly extracts all the sugar out of the mesquite beans, and then the resulting liquid looks like maple syrup.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So there's that. There's the green trees that you've been seeing, the wood's all green. Mm-hmm. Those are called palo verde, and palo verde they set beans too. So you eat them green, like right in the spring. Then you pop open the pod, and they'll be little. They look like baby fava beans.
Interesting.
And they taste a lot like baby fava beans, but they smell like concrete after a thunderstorm. There's a particular kind of ozone-y smell to them, which I find fascinating.
I've seen bites taken out of those.
The prickly pear pads?
Yes.
Yeah, you can eat the nopales. You can go to any Mexican market here and find nopalitos. I make salsa out of them, and they're tricky to cook because they're super slimy. Mm-hmm. So you cut them up, and then there's just different ways to de-slime them. But they're really good. They're tart. They taste like a.
Is it the javelina that's eating them, or the deer,
rabbits,
or the rabbits?
Rabbits too. Yeah, javelina love them
because they have big chomper.
That's
bites.
like a javelina. But yeah, almost everything eats them, and then they also have the prickly pear fruit. So those are delicious. But the problem with that is that you've got to pick them with tongs because they're covered with. Spines.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So tell me this. Let's say a lot of the guys that listen to this podcast, they're bow hunters.
Yep.
They're chasing antelope, deer, back to the buck moose kind of situation.
Right.
Primarily. What is having produced your book and gotten it out there, published it, people have tested and used the recipes. Mm-hmm. What would you say is one of the more popular recipes, one that you would recommend to those that are listening? Like, you got to try this.
Steak Diane.
What did you say?
Steak Diane.
Steak Diane.
Yeah. So if anybody's old here who's listening, you'll know that this is super class. Like basically, it's 1965 called and wants its recipe back, but it's a 150, almost 200-year-old recipe that used to be called Steak Diana. So Diana is the goddess of the hunt, and as you well know, Artemis and Diana, the same people. She uses a bow. That's not why I'm recommending it, but just serendipity. But it's done with backstrap, and it's a very simple pan sauce that goes in, like, so when you're resting your backstrap before you cut it into medallions. By the way, unless you're hunting elk or other large things, keep your backstrap in lengths that you're going to eat. Don't cut it into medallions. It's a million times easier to properly cook a backstrap if it's in a foot-long length. And as you also know, like a backstrap has a kind of a flat end on the back, and then it has a perfect end in the center, and then it's got a kind of a pointy end in the front. Yep. You can play with that, so you can cut perfect lengths of that go with the geography of your backstrap. And so if you cook them in like foot-long lengths and just sear them on that, and do you know the finger test for doneness? To if your steak is cooked right. All right, this is good for video. So hold your hand out. We'll take that.
Okay.
So hold your hand out and then touch this part of just keep your hand loose and touch this pad.
Okay. This is the pad near my thumb.
Yep. The pad near your thumb, and it just feels gushy, right?
Yeah.
That's what raw meat feels like. So now just touch your thumb and forefinger.
Okay.
Don't press, just touch. Now press that same spot. See how it's a little bit firmer? Mm-hmm. That's rare. That's what rare meat feels like.
Okay.
Now you press your middle finger, which is the New Jersey waving finger.
Yeah.
Now you see it's still soft, but it's much firmer.
Yeah.
That's dead medium.
Okay.
Now, just for the heck of it, do your ring finger. See how firm that is? It's like, dude, really? And
that's how my mom does it, and she doesn't like steak.
And now do your pinky. You get no give at all, right?
Right.
That's cat food.
Okay. That's interesting.
So the steak Diane, you cook your steak however you want it, and then you cut it into medallions, or you can do it with medallions. No one's going to die if you do it with medallions. But it's when you're resting the meat.
Whenever I get it, I always cut it in the big chunks and keep it there.
Then you're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And then you make the sauce has got a little bit of shallots. It's got whatever fat was left in the pan, Worcestershire sauce, mustard, prepared mustard, a little splash of wine, and it just goes and cooks. It cooks in the time it takes for the backstrap to rest. Cut it in medallions, hit it with a little salt, pour the sauce over, bada bing, bada boom. And it's super French, super easy. Like you can do this on a Tuesday night. Really? And it's in I know a lot of 20-some-odd-year-olds will be like, dude, it's the first thing I ever made for my girlfriend, and I think we're getting married,
Right.
Because it's that easy to make. It's that thing, because I made it.
It's so fancy.
When I was a 20-something-year-old, courting young girls, when you're 22 and you're dating a 22-year-old, you can make this. You can do this, and you look super studly when you do it.
That's awesome. Okay. Anything else? Any other ones you recommend? So
that would be good because everybody worships at the temple of the backstrap. For me, it's always the last piece of meat that gets eaten because it bores me.
It's not challenging enough.
Yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's just I think barbacoa.
Okay.
So barbacoa can be done with really any meat, but if you've ever had, so if you want to know what it tastes like, go to Chipotle and order the barbacoa.
Yeah,
because that's what it tastes like. Shredded, braised, barbecued meat that's amazing in tacos or burrito,
right?
Or anything really. You do this with a shoulder. You can do it with a piece of shoulder. You can do it with a piece of neck, or you can do it with an entire shoulder if you shoot like a coos deer. So it has to fit in your pot, of course. So it's just slow braised, and then until the meat falls off the bone. So do it on a weekend, but do a whole shoulder on a weekend, shred it, and you have meat for the entire week. So then, I'm actually doing that with a jackrabbit today.
Right.
So you make an easy chili sauce, and then just toss the shredded meat with this easy chili sauce, and it can be as hot or as mild as you want it, and then you're done.
Okay.
Now here's the thing that picks it up one extra notch. save the braising liquid. So everything that you braise that in, put it in a mason jar or a plastic bag or anything, and don't throw it out. So if you're going to make barbacoa again in the next 5 or 6 days, just leave it in the fridge. But if you're not, put it in the freezer and use that every single time that you make barbacoa. And you'll have to put a little bit extra in every time to refresh it. But that's called a master stock, and it's a Chinese invention. But it's basically like if you eat my barbacoa at home, it's better than yours because of that. Because that master stock has been going and going and going and going for years.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's in a jar in the freezer. It says, barbacoa master stock. And cool. I take it out whenever I'm doing it, and then you have to add more, but so it changes over time. And it's been done. That same broth has been done with deer, elk, jackrabbits, a beaver. Because actually, that's probably the best beaver recipe I can think of. Sauerbraten's another good one. But yeah, so that's that. So that would be
and you cover all of this in your book.
Yeah. Oh yeah, both recipes are in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's a go-to easy recipe. You can do it in a crock pot.
Yeah.
If you've got like shoulder roast, like big gnarly connective tissue roasts, and you put them in a crock pot and cover them with this liquid,
you're gold.
You have to do almost nothing but shred meat. And if you can't shred meat,
I can't help
turn
you.
this off.
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying I watched you prepare a Mexican duck in here.
An actual Mexican duck. That's not a Mexican cooked duck. A duck that happens to be.
It's classified as is it taxonomy as a Mexican duck?
Mexican duck. Yeah.
But although it's under debate and some argue.
It's a quasi Mallard.
Yeah. So, but you got this duck and it looks really pretty in there.
Doesn't it?
It does. It looks like all like ready to eat. So what is it about ducks that you like?
Well, I live in Northern California. So I live in the home of the Pacific Flyway. Mm-hmm. So 9 million waterfowl winter within 2 hours of my house. So if you're a hunter and you live in Northern California, you're crazy to not hunt ducks. We have 107 days. It's arguably the best duck hunting in the country. I can think of another half dozen places that are as good, but I don't think I can think of any.
I wouldn't think California is.
Nobody does.
Duck.
I just ruined it. Now everybody's going to go to it. But it's not only is it duck paradise, but the quality of the ducks is so profoundly amazing because of our rice industry.
Okay.
So Arkansas gets this too.
So these are fat ducks.
Morbidly obese ducks.
Yeah. Like,
oh my God, they're coming. Like, how do they even fly ducks? And 1/4 inch of fat on the breast.
And Holly, I saw her publication in there.
Yep.
What's that called?
It's California Waterfowl Magazine. And we met as journalists. So she was a database and investigative reporter as well. So she brings all of that data knowledge and the ability to crunch numbers. And so my special skill when I was a reporter was I'm very good at getting people to tell me things that they don't normally want to say. So I was very good
That's a good talent.
And I'm also very good at supposing what should be right, asking questions to the people who really know if it's right or not in such a way that they confirm it without me actually knowing. So that was what I was very good at. Yeah. And it's a very good skill for a political reporter. Her special skill is to make the unintelligible fascinating. So like she would do like stories about the budget or healthcare that were really great to read because she's like, oh, that's why I should care. Oh. So she does that at Cal Waterfowl Magazine now, where she does a banding story every year. So she's got all the weirdest bands that were shot in California, and then all the California birds that are really cool stories somewhere else. Like somebody shot a banded pintail in Tokyo, a pintail banded in the Sacramento Valley in Tokyo.
No way.
Yep. There was a wood duck from I think it was Merced County in the Central Valley where we live. That was shot in Louisiana.
That's crazy.
Who knew? So she does that kind of stuff, and then she does, so that it's. I mean, I'm just bragging on her right now, but I think it's the best. I think it's the best organizational magazine, like RMEF and Ducks Unlimited and that kind of stuff. I think it's the best of its kind because she's not just a hunter. She's a frothing at the mouth rabid waterfowl hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can tell when she's a kid.
Oh yeah. I mean, her tail's wagging the whole time.
That's right.
She's a lab.
Yeah. So the ducks, I mean, So you have all that opportunity, but what about eating them?
Best tasting ducks there is. We can shoot, I think, 19 species, and not everyone's a great one. Like buffleheads are no great shakes, but pintails and wood ducks and mallards, and if you hunt,
do they have different distinct flavors?
Oh, very much so, very much so. So a canvasback is the king of ducks because they tend to be fat, they tend to be not neutral tasting. They're strong tasting duck, but it's a good. They taste like dry aged beef with a hat made of bacon on it. It's like, so that's why those canvasbacks, and then, but in a pintail is arguably fattier, but it's going to be much more neutral. So like if I were to serve a civilian, i.e. somebody who's not used to wild game, a wild duck, I'd serve them pintail first. But if you don't live in pintail country, a wood duck will serve that purpose. Mallards, which is everybody worships at the cult of the greenhead. Clearly I don't. I like greenheads, but I'm not going to, but I ain't greenhead, I ain't shooting it. As that's not me. You do realize I've killed like 10 times as many does as I have bucks in my life. Because you can't eat antlers.
Yeah, right. Totally.
But so, and then they have very distinct, I wrote an article called Terroir in Ducks. So terroir is a wine term for, if I make a Cabernet Sauvignon in one place, it's not going to taste the same as a Cabernet Sauvignon in another place. Because the days are longer or shorter, the heat was different, when did you pick the grapes, how did you, there's a lot of,
that goes into it.
So you can tell, like I can tell you if that's a Napa wine without looking at it.
Okay.
I mean, if I taste it, I'm like, that's probably a Napa wine. I mean, I do this. So, I mean, I'm not a sommelier, but I play one on TV.
Yeah.
So, because there's a very specific thing that it tastes. So, if you eat a gadwall, for example, in the rice, so north of the city of Sacramento, in the rice fields, they're amazing. They're fat. They're amazing. You eat a gadwall 90 miles south in the grasslands, and they're disgusting. So, it's a diet-based thing as well.
Right. Okay. Not so much as much species. That does have an impact.
Another great example is ruddy ducks and buffleheads. Mm-hmm. Everybody lumps them together. So, but the problem is a bufflehead's 80% of its diet is invertebrates, shrimpy things. They're icky ducks, so you skin them. 80% of a ruddy duck's diet is plants. So they're going to taste way more neutral. So I've had amazing ruddy ducks. And in fact, the ruddy duck used to be called the dollar duck back in the market hunting days 100 years ago, because 2 of them were $1. They were like the number 3 or number 4 duck in the market.
Really?
Cans and redheads.
So tell me about the ducks here in Arizona.
I have to ask Jonathan about that. This is the first time I've ever shot ducks in Arizona. I mean, the fact that we can shoot ducks in Arizona is kind of amazing.
I know. I felt like it's a desert, but every body of water I come across, there's ducks in it.
So this Mexican mallard was really fascinating. So we picked it today, and I was lucky enough to shoot it correctly, i.e. in the head. So you look at the duck, and there's not a shot on it. It's beautiful. And it doesn't. I try to do that, but I don't always succeed. Uh-huh. So it's, first of all, it looks nice, but as I'm picking this thing, I'm like, first of all, it's very yellow. Its skin is the color of a corn tortilla. Mm-hmm. And it's very yellow, but doesn't smell fishy. So sometimes when you see yellow fat, when there's no corn anywhere around, it can be fishy. So that was one thing. And then the other was, it was actually kind of fat. Yeah.
I've noticed most of the animals here that Coatimundi has had a whole half inch of fat all in the back half of its body.
I saw that. And the cooster I shot, sorry to rub it in, but the cooster I shot in December, that was a super fat deer.
Yeah.
Not like, sway back,
right.
Idaho whitetail doe, but but it was plenty of fat on there.
No, I am surprised, what we've seen here in camp. Every little critter has some fat on it. A lot more than I would. For some reason, I expect everything here, like the rabbits, to be all malnourished and bony, and they seem they're thriving.
Yeah,
and it's kind of a droughty time right now.
It's a very droughty time. They should have had 3 or 4 rains in the last month. They've had 1.
Yeah. How do you cook a duck?
So remember I told you the biggest mistake that everybody makes with game in general is they cook the tender parts too much and the tough parts too little. So that's in spades with waterfowl, ducks or geese. So they think it's a bird. Looks like a bird. And biologically speaking, yes, it's a bird. But in the kitchen, it's not a bird. You treat it like beef.
Oh.
So the answer to, if you want to, the one thing I can tell you that I can go on and on about waterfowl, but the one tip is that cook the breasts like a steak and cook the legs like brisket.
Really?
So medium rare, 3/4 of the time on the skin side, or the side that had the skin if you did skin the duck.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
Just boom, boom.
I mean, it takes a while. It takes like 8 minutes on the skin side because you want to crisp that skin up, and then the other side is like 2-3 minutes, and then you stand them on end for a minute and let them rest, and that's it. I mean, duck breast is when Holly and I have been working our butts off, and it's like she doesn't get home till 7, and I'm I work at home, so I look up, I'm like, oh, everything's dark in the house is I haven't turned any lights on. So that's what I cook. I'll take some duck breasts, I'll de-thaw them. By the way, if you use a vacuum sealer, the easiest way to thaw something is throw it into a giant pot of cold water. It's a restaurant trick. Yes,
cold water.
Well, cold for 2 reasons. One, if you put hot water in there, you increase the surface temperature of the duck or whatever way past what's safe for food safety. So if you had bacteria or weird stuff on it, it can get ugly in a hurry.
Okay.
Second of all, you can cook the outside of the bird or whatever, the backstrap or anything. So, but have you ever fallen in ice cold water like yourself? Yes. Doesn't it suck?
It's horrible.
And it literally sucks the heat out of you like
the
that.
soul from your body.
Oh, yeah.
So
it does the same thing. So what happens is your frozen piece of meat in the vac sealed bag becomes an ice cube. You know how fast ice cubes melt in cold water.
Yeah.
It's the same deal.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And I can thaw
much more controlled.
It's safe and it takes 20 minutes. Now it might take longer for like a turkey, or a big giant thing, but if you're in a pinch and you want to do backstrap or tenderloins or bird breasts or something like that, boom.
So that's all it takes to cook a duck.
Yeah.
So like that ribeye, or not the ribeye of the sky.
Cranes.
The cranes. That came out like beef.
Yeah, cranes are weirdly beefy.
I mean,
like shockingly beefy.
Incredible. It was also done rare.
Probably medium rare, but
medium rare. And it just melted in your mouth. It was delicious. So you can cook a duck like that, and there's no danger of.
Like that. Nope.
Why is it like a chicken is a problem, but a duck isn't?
And a chicken. Here's a funny thing that'll blow your mind. So for all these books that I do, there's a food safety section in every one of them. And so I spend a lot of time looking through scientific data and CDC data and everything about foodborne illnesses with various animals. I can find like 2 examples of people getting a foodborne illness with quail. And I suspect those were store-bought quail because it's hard to read through the data to that granular level. Okay. Like turkeys, I stopped at I read like 1,000 foodborne illness reports, and I gave up because there was none that involved wild turkeys.
Okay.
People don't get sick from, I talked to McFarland pheasants, and they're the largest pheasant breeder in the country. So like if you get pheasant in the supermarket, they did it. They've never had an outbreak of salmonella. So what happens is the reason why if you raise chickens correctly, you don't have to worry about salmonella. It's all about factory farming. I mean, and to be honest, that's one of the big reasons why I picked up a rifle and a shotgun, is because I am deeply opposed to the factory farm system. Like I get on some level that, we got to feed a lot of people, but I don't have to be. I have the ability to not be in that system as much as possible. And I have not bought meat or fish for the house more than, I can count on less than one hand the times I've bought meat or fish for the house since 2005. So it's 12 years,
a long time.
almost, I'm in my 13th year.
Living off the land, basically.
Living off the land. Mm-hmm. And so for me, is it healthier? Probably, maybe, I don't know.
I'm sure it is.
But it certainly tastes better. It's more interesting. Mm-hmm. This is, one of the things that people are going to want to know, especially if they're deer hunters, is like the variability. And you were talking about your moose. The variability is profound because you have, especially so with omnivores, ducks, pigs, bears are probably our biggest 3 omnivores. A fish-eating mallard is disgusting. A rice-eating mallard is wonderful.
Right.
A berry-eating bear is one of the most greatest things in the world. A salmon-eating bear is like, I won't go near it.
I ate an Oklahoma whitetail this year, and it was I think it was the best meat I've ever eaten. Mm-hmm. And when I told people that it was way better than my BC moose, mm-hmm. you would have thought I was sacrilegious. I'm like, look, I'm telling you, this deer was incredible. It was like candy.
Antelope's my favorite. Pronghorn. I'll take a pronghorn over any other cervid.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And twice on Sunday.
Is that...
They're different. They're lighter in color. If you treat them right...
Randy Newberg worships at the altar of antelope.
I'm kind of there too. I mean, so the problem that people have with antelope, mm-hmm. whereas we like to call them antelopes.
I haven't heard that one.
So if you chase, pseudocapra, whatever it is, you have to know they're not deer. They're not goats either. They're their own thing. They're the only member of their genus. So
they're fascinating,
isn't it? So they're waiting for the cheetah, So the cheetah, this is new news, actually. This is like within the last 5 or 10 years. They realized that the cheetah in Africa and Asia, because there are Asian cheetahs too, mm-hmm. it's not from there. It's from here. It went the other way over the Bering Land Bridge. So our cheetahs died out in the Ice Age. Their cheetahs didn't.
Yeah, I read American Serengeti, and Dan Flores talks
does he go
about
into
this.
that? Yeah.
And he talks about how they make no sense. Antelope make no sense in the United States, on this continent, because
without the cheetah,
mm-hmm. because they have these survival characteristics that don't match any predators.
Yep.
And so they're just sort of this critter that's out there, and the archaeological record shows that they're really unchanged for a very long time.
That's interesting.
And so what you've got now is sort of this holdover that seemed to survive like 2 mass extinctions, mm-hmm. while everything else kept disappearing. And so they're still here.
Yeah. And they take great pleasure in wearing out coyotes. There's a number of YouTube videos of teams of coyotes planning, and there's this guy way overhead, there's 3 others over there, and they're like, we're going to get this battle, yeah! And it's just like Wile E. Coyote. They fail every time.
Yeah.
Unless they can corner them on a fence, they can't get them.
That's the one thing that's fascinating about a antelope is that how they struggle with a fence.
Yep. They can't jump like a whitetail.
Yeah. They're done at a fence.
Well, they're 40 miles an hour faster than a whitetail.
Mm-hmm. But when they get to a fence, it's amazing that it doesn't even have to be very tall.
They can jump. I've seen them jump, but mm-hmm. they sort of stand there and look at it for a long time before but they want to go underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing that gets everybody in trouble with antelope is, you have to you shoot the antelope. Yay. Take your picture. Sweet. I shot an antelope. Got that thing right away. Right away.
Got it.
Yep.
Instantly.
Within 10, 15 minutes if you can, which is usually easy. Uh-huh. It's usually, hey, there's a dead antelope in the middle of the field that I just shot. I'm going to walk up on it and, take my picture and start working on it. You rarely have to track an antelope. Right. Because the other thing, this is also important, we've both killed antelope, and whenever you shoot an antelope, it's like, oh, I'm dead, and then they die.
Right. The antelope they seem to blow over.
Yeah, it's I'm dead. And so because they're really nervous animals.
Yeah,
they're super nervous animals, and they're just all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's why they die easy. But their body temperature's higher than a deer's. Their coat, and if you live in a cold place where antelope hang out in the winter, you'll see a whole bunch of antelope just chilling in a field with 40 mile an hour winds, and it's 40 below zero, and they're like, hey, what's going on?
They live in Wyoming.
Yeah,
I think it's the windiest place on the planet. Icy wind.
It's just like, hey, what's going on? And it's because that hide holds in heat way better than a deer's. So they're nervous. Their body temperature's high. Their hide holds in heat. And a lot of guys, if the 5 of us were hunting antelope, there's a lot of guys who wouldn't gut the first one until the 5th guy shot his antelope.
Yeah.
And that is a recipe for icky antelope. But, when it's treated right, any day and twice on Sunday.
So you got them as soon as possible, 15 minutes, within 15 minutes or so.
Save a Ziploc bag for the heart, liver, and kidneys if you're so inclined.
Which I am. So you skin them out, and then you can take your time a little bit.
Well, what I do is I'll gut it in the field and then drag it to some place where I can skin it, and then get it cold.
Yeah.
I've got a big old tuna cooler. That's the funny thing. So, like I said, I just started hunting 17 years ago, and for the longest time, the biggest thing that I'd ever killed was a tuna. I caught a 467-pound giant bluefin in 1990.
Jeez.
And that thing paid me $5,000, man.
That is a giant fish.
I had just enough wherewithal. You know, I'm 20 years old at the time, so I had just enough wherewithal to put my next semester's tuition in the bank. And then, do you have any idea the quality of female that will take a look at you when you're throwing like $100 bills in a cheap Irish bar in 1990? I'm going to tell you, it's memorable.
Nice. Nice.
So, but for years, you know, and then I finally killed an elk, you know, and I've killed a few elk, but that was it.
Nice. Well, we should probably wrap up.
Yep.
We got dinner on the.
We do.
In the kitchen. But Hank, where can people look you up?
So I'm all over social media. I'm very active on Pinterest. I'm very active on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So you can always ping me on Twitter. I'm Hank __ Shaw on Twitter. I'm Hunt Gather Cook on Instagram, and I am the Hunt Gather Cook forum on Facebook. That's where the action is. Mm-hmm. So I have to let you in. So it's a closed group. So when you say, hey, I want to be a member of this group, there's like some questions that I ask people because I kind of want people who are into this.
Yeah.
So if you're into it, just say, hey, I heard you on the Gritty Bowmen podcast. So then, boom, you're in. Okay. So then I know you're not some spammer from Indonesia.
Right, totally.
No, of course, spammers from Indonesia are going to listen to this. But
crack the code.
But the website, the core of everything I do is Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook. And that's huntgathercook.com. But honestly, if you Google my name, you'll
huntgathercook.com. Yep. And on there, I imagine they can link up with all your social media accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a newsletter too.
Whatever their favorite way. Yep. You got a newsletter?
Yeah, I do my
email.
Newsletter is so that you get to it from the website, and I only send out once a month because I don't like to be spammy. Yeah. And it's a real newsletter. I mean, I'm actually writing it, so it's just like a rehash of old posts.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say that I'm restarting my own podcast.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is actually news. I have not said this publicly anywhere.
That's awesome. Because, you know, there's a whole food movement around wild game. Mm-hmm. And the more people equate wild game with survival, with mm-hmm. food, with the food element, and then look at it in terms of like these beautiful color photos you've got in this book, where wild game becomes very mainstream, basically. Mm-hmm. It just helps with the whole idea around hunting in general and the acceptance of it.
I mean, I think it's the future. The future is if every survey they've ever done shows that, hey man, why are you hunting? Like, we always get asked that. Do you eat it? Duh. You really think I'm going to climb up mountains or like,
right.
you know, just walk 12 miles, 15, 20 miles for a bird this big if I'm not going to eat it? You're high. I mean.
Totally. So I think that's awesome. And then, you know, I mess around with recipes, like I said, and I'll follow some things and I cook and I watch a lot of Meat Eater and I copy some of Steven's stuff and sometimes I pull it off and sometimes I'm like, I must have done something wrong, or he's just okay with this food and I'm not.
Yeah.
You know? So, but, being able to be inspired on a weekly or monthly basis by someone talking about a food dish or something is, I mean, I'd want to like run home and, okay, today's I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we kind of do that. I mean, I post twice a week on the website and I'm all over social media. So, and I answer questions. So like if you, around certain seasons, I'm like what is it? The butterball turkey hotline for Thanksgiving. I'm like, I end up thinking like the venison backstrap hotline dude, or the goose one. Like everybody who's got it, like I can't make goose taste good.
Yeah,
like,
we talked about that.
You're doing it wrong.
We talked about that today. I got to get your books.
Yep,
and those can be purchased at Amazon.
They can be purchased at Amazon, but they're national books. You can get your local bookstore can order them. They should be in Barnes and Noble. They're in Canada too. So
okay.
That's the new thing is both buck moose and all of the books are available in Canada. So
pheasant, quail, cottontail.
Actually say they are available wherever fine books are sold.
That's got to feel good.
It does.
That's very cool. Well, congratulations on doing this, incredible work. And I'm glad you came on the podcast. It was fun hanging out in camp. And folks, go check out Hunt, Gather, Cook. Stay gritty.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself.
What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals in the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.